The success of the Triple Offensive gave Europe only a brief moment to breathe. France's armored spearheads had driven deep into western Germany. Rotterdam once again flew Allied colors. Even the desperate struggles of the Northern Alliance in the north had forced Germany to reveal manpower it could scarcely spare. For the first time since the war began, Berlin appeared stretched, but celebration faded almost as quickly as it had begun. In the halls of Paris and London, the mood shifted from triumph to uncertainty. Intelligence reports poured in, confirming what many feared. Germany was no longer standing alone. The newly formed alliance with Poland meant that a second, fully modern army now stood behind Berlin. Fresh divisions, operational reserves, and independent supply routes that completely altered the strategic equation. What had been a war of pressure had become a looming confrontation between two continental coalitions. To push any farther east meant committing everything France and the UK still held in reserve, and risking a decisive defeat if the new alliance struck first. The calculus had changed completely. Paris made the difficult decision. Better to yield ground than gamble the entire war. French commanders ordered a controlled withdrawal from the most exposed forward positions inside occupied German territory. Armored units disengaged methodically, falling back toward fortified Rhine defenses that offered defensible lines instead of stretched spearheads. It wasn't a retreat born of defeat. It was a strategic contraction designed to preserve strength for what everyone sensed was coming next. Across the northwestern front, the UK mirrored the move. British troops gradually pulled out of the Netherlands, transferring control of liberated territories to provisional authorities before redeploying into France. Mechanized brigades repositioned along transportation corridors that led south toward Alsace and the approaches to Paris, areas now deemed the most likely axes of a major German counterstroke. Within days, Europe's front lines went quiet. Then the storm broke. The warning came too late for any dramatic response. Border patrols confirmed massive formations moving westward, long columns of German armor joined by newly arrived Polish mechanized divisions. Railways along the eastern frontier offloaded endless equipment trains. Forward depots sprang up overnight. Artillery parks assembled in the forests beyond the Rhine hills. The joined German-Polish offensive was forming, and its direction became unmistakably clear. Their objective was Strasbourg. The city sat astride one of the most important crossings between western Germany and eastern France. A gateway that, if forced open, would put the road to Paris directly under threat. For Berlin and Warsaw, it offered the perfect battlefield. Confined terrain, prepared logistics routes, and the political weight of striking into French territory itself. The Franco-British coalition rushed to reinforce the sector. French armored brigades rapidly redeployed to the Alsatian frontier. British mechanized battalions were pulled from garrisons in northern France and railed south at breakneck speed. Emergency airlift brought additional infantry units directly into forward airfields. Defensive belts were hastily reinforced, trenches reopened, and artillery batteries dug into firing shelters overlooking likely approach axes. By the time the German-Polish spearheads reached the outskirts of Strasbourg, the Franco-British line had solidified into a grim defensive wall stretching across fields, wooded ridges, and reinforced urban approaches. Then the battle erupted. The opening bombardment shattered the calm. German and Polish artillery unleashed an unbroken storm of shells across the front line, flattening defensive emplacements and targeting command nodes in carefully planned waves. Under the rolling barrage, armored columns began advancing, heavy German formations spearheading the thrust, with Polish mechanized infantry following in dense support waves. French anti-tank teams engaged immediately, ambushing lead tanks along narrowing approaches. British armored units maneuvered from concealment to strike at exposed flanks, cutting into the advancing formations wherever openings appeared. Infantry clashes exploded along hedgerows and village perimeters as squads fought building by building to deny penetration points. For 2 days, the battlefield burned. The Franco-British defenders fought with ferocity. Artillery batteries fired non-stop until barrels overheated. Air support contested the skies as both sides battled for control above the city's approaches. Casualties mounted across both armies. Some zones changed hands multiple times in a single day, reduced to rubble by the sheer volume of firepower poured into them. But numbers and depth began to tell. Each German or Polish unit that stalled was quickly replaced by another rolling from reserve positions. The attackers possessed uninterrupted logistics corridors, feeding the front at full capacity, while French and British supply routes grew increasingly strained under constant bombardment. By the third day, the pressure became overwhelming. Defensive gaps opened faster than they could be sealed. A Polish mechanized breakthrough along a wooded sector forced a partial encirclement of one Franco-British brigade, compelling a hurried withdrawal. German heavy armor exploited the opening, driving into secondary defensive belts and forcing the Allied line to collapse in segments. Reluctantly, coalition commanders gave the order, "Pull back." The withdrawal was disciplined but costly. French rearguards and British armor fought stubborn delaying actions, holding intersections and towns long enough for frontline units to disengage. The Battle of Strasbourg was over. Germany and Poland stood victorious. With the defensive line cracked, the combined armies surged forward. Their advance toward Paris gathered momentum. Columns poured through the liberated corridors east of the Rhine, sweeping aside outposts and bypassing minor resistance. For the first time in the war, enemy armored formations stood less than 200 kilometers from France's capital. The psychological shock rippled across Europe. Paris moved quickly, not militarily, but diplomatically. Before the German-Polish spearheads could close the distance further, a formal transmission was sent to Berlin. Paris, Berlin. France calls for an immediate ceasefire and negotiations. Berlin accepted without hesitation. Germany knew precisely where the balance now lay and intended to dictate its terms from a position of undeniable strength. Representatives from Germany, Poland, France, and the United Kingdom convened in Paris days later. The atmosphere inside the negotiation halls was heavy, thick with exhaustion and bitterness. Victors and near victors sat across the table from leaders who knew their hands were empty. Germany wasted little time presenting its demands. The Netherlands would be returned under permanent German administration. Ireland would regain political autonomy, ending British occupation. Strasbourg and a surrounding corridor west of the Rhine would remain under direct German control indefinitely. Germany would also assume formal military guarantees over Poland, pledging intervention should Polish territory or its Baltic positions be threatened by any outside power. The Franco-British representatives protested fiercely, but the battlefield had already determined the outcome. They had no leverage left. One by one, the terms were accepted, and with that, peace was signed across the European continent. Not a peace of reconciliation, but a ceasefire born of exhaustion and imposed power. The guns fell silent, armies halted, borders froze into uneasy new shapes. France watched the Rhine once more. The UK withdrew across the Channel, licking its wounds. The Northern Alliance stood battered but intact, and Germany now joined firmly with Poland. emerged stronger than it had ever been when the war began. Europe had peace again. But as the ink dried on the treaties, few could escape the question humming beneath every conversation: how long could such a peace truly last, when so much had been settled at the barrel of a gun?